Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping you're having a good one today. I'm the Metal Junkie, and today we finally reached the day that I rank Manowar, all their albums, all their studio albums. We're going to start with a tier ranking, and we're going to end with a regular ranking going from worst to best. So stay tuned for that. Looking at the tiers here, I got Kings of Metal at the top, which is basically the best of the best, close enough to a masterpiece as you can get. Up next is Amazing, which is like a 9 out of 10, very close. Next is Great, Good, Just Okay, Below Average, Bad, and God Awful. Hopefully, we don't see any of those today. So, strap in. I'm not the biggest Manowar fan to begin with. I've only known two albums, Battle Hymns and Kings of Metal. I've known those for maybe 2 years or so, but all the rest of these albums are all new to me. I reacted to every song by the band off their studio albums so far, so if you're interested in checking that out, I have a whole Manowar playlist. And yeah, I am going to get to the EPs and all the other bonus tracks after this ranking, so stay tuned for that as well. And I'm going to continue this with all different bands, so if you're excited about that, if you're interested in that, definitely subscribe and like. Let's get right into this before I screw up any more words. We're just going to do them in order, guys, starting with Battle Hymns, their first album from 1982, I believe. And for me, this album is friggin' amazing. Even better than amazing, it's king of metal, man. It is as close to a masterpiece as you can get. I love the sound of this album. Sounds different than anything else the band put out because it still has that hard rock feeling from the late 70s mixed with the heavy metal sound, and I just absolutely love it. Great riffs. A fairly simple album when it comes to the musicianship, but it's just done so well. Very consistent in the tracks. I got the tracks written down here. Metal Days is a track I listened to a million times. I think it's so underrated. Fast Takers, amazing. Battle Hymn, it's like their big song, and it all started with this first album here. And is really a glimpse into the future of Manowar, the song Battle Hymn. And Dark Avenger, too, a little bit. I also like that one. Orson Welles doing the narration, freaking amazing. It's very quick, it flows great. It's only like 36 minutes long or something like that. And yeah, I absolutely love their first album. It's one of their best. Absolutely. And there's not really any bad track. William's Tale is our nonsensical bass solo type track, but it's very quick. It's only like 2 minutes long or something, so I don't mind this one. And yeah, so unlike some of the other bass instrumentals that we'll get to, this one's one of the better ones that I can actually sit through and enjoy. So yeah, Battle Hymns, friggin' amazing record. It's one of my favorites. Moving on to their second album, Into Glory Ride. Now, I know this is a fan favorite. You guys absolutely love it. And it is a great album. I really love it. Especially Secret of Steel, Gloves of Metal, and Revelation. That's Angel. So friggin' good. Those are my top three tracks for sure off this album. And everything else is good. Not really a bad track on here. March for Revenge, probably my least favorite, but it's still pretty solid. I just don't think the album flows as nicely as, say, their debut. Gates of Valhalla and Hatred, while they're good songs, they're a little too long for the material they have. They're a little too extended for me, but I can see why you guys really enjoy them. But yeah, a great album. It's a bit slower, but heavier at the same time. It definitely adds more metal and kind of removes the hard rock. Sorry, I got an emergency alert looking for a missing person. Let's continue. um, so yeah, there's no nonsense tracks, so there's no like filler bass instrumentals or nothing, so that's great. And yeah, very solid album. So where does it go for me? For me, it's going under great. It's around an 8.5 or so for me out of 10. Freaking great album. Just because it's not in Kings of Metal or Amazing, guys, does not mean that I hate it. It's definitely a great album. Because I know some people are going to come at me saying, that's not how you should rank Manowar, but this is my list. We're going to have different lists, that's for sure. Moving on. Album number 3, Hail to England Now. This has potential easily to be the best album out of all their albums. It's so good. I love the guitar style in this, the riffs. It's heavy, it has an edge to it, a lot of palm muting and stuff. Very, very good. Army of the Immortals, one of the greatest songs the band has ever written, and it's a great song about their fans, and how they really respect and cherish their fan base. Hail to England, another friggin' masterpiece. Every song's so good. Each Dawn I Die, listen to that song nonstop. The production's not the best. It does sound raw, but I don't mind a raw production. It's better than some of the other productions we get on the later albums. But yeah, so this is a very accessible album. It's short. The songs are all short on it. Black Arrows is a very skippable track for me, though. That's one of the bass instrumentals, weird little experimental tracks that I just can't do. I have to skip it every time. And Bridge of Death is just okay to me, but it really pales in comparison to the first 5 tracks on the album. They're all just so good. The first 5, it's amazing. But yeah, it's a freaking great record. Where am I going to put it? I think I prefer it over Into Glory Ride. I'm going to put under Amazing. It has potential to be one of the kings of metal. It's just Black Arrows kind of hurts it for me, and Bridge of Death, again, is just not as strong as the earlier tracks on the album, but still a friggin' killer album, man. Another killer album is their 4th album that comes right after, which is Sign of the Hammer. Now, Sign of the Hammer and Hail to England are 2 albums that go neck and neck for me. I have a really hard time choosing which I prefer. While they both came out the same year, 1984, they very much have different sounds to them. I feel like Sign of the Hammer might get the slight edge for me just because you get a little bit more variety in there and the type of songs. And I think the quality is just a bit better in the production area. But yeah, All Men Play on 10, friggin' classic masterpiece track. This is one of their first like arena sounding tracks, and I absolutely love it. Where you get Animals, the next track, and it's more like a glam metal song. Interesting enough, especially with the wow. And then you move on to a track like Thor, which is, quintessential Manowar style. And I freaking love Thor. It's one of my favorite tracks on this album. This album is killer, man. Guyana, not Diana. If you watch my reaction, I kept thinking they were saying Diana in the chorus, even though I clearly knew the song was about this cult. But yeah, that track is just masterfully written. Everything is just so good on here, especially the title track. It's just Thunderpick. Again, this bass experimental solo track just doesn't do it for me. It's very skippable. But yeah, I like how this album has more variety than Hail to England, but they're so close, neck to neck for me. It's going in Amazing as well. But both these albums are so close to moving up to Kings of Metal. They're just little things holding it back. Not much, though. 4 albums in, moving on to number 5, Fighting the World. Now, this album is another great one. Fighting the World itself is one of the songs I listen to the most from Manowar since I've done all these reactions. It's always getting stuck in my head, and I absolutely love it. Blow Your Speakers is good. Defender is good. Carry On, I find, is a little lame. It's an okay track. I even caught myself having it stuck in my head one day while I was working. I'm like, damn, I got Carry On stuck in my head. Never thought that would happen, but yeah, it's kind of cheesy, kind of lame, but it's still listenable. But to me, that's probably the weakest track on the album, just for me. Violence and Bloodshed. That is such a good track, but it's too short. I want more of it every time I hear it. Holy War, another great, great track, but it ends on such a high note with Black Wind, Fire, and Steel. That is one of their best power metal driven tracks, especially the chorus. It's so damn catchy. Such a good friggin' album. And yeah, another album that kind of has a bit of variety. You got your arena style track, a little bit of glam metal in there. You got like a ballad type track with Carry On. And then we move into the more serious, heavy Manowar stuff. We do get Drums of Doom and Master of Revenge, which could be considered filler experimental tracks, but I actually don't mind them. Drums of Doom is short and it really goes pairs well with like Holy War, I feel. And Master of Revenge just has really cool, eerie sounding guitars, so I actually like that one as well. So yeah, very solid album again. You're starting to see a little change in the sound though. But yeah, I'm sticking this one in great. It's up there as well. I love it. Moving on, switch pages. Got my track list here. Album number 6 is Kings of Metal, a fan favorite for sure. It was the first album I've ever heard in full by Manowar. I had the whole reaction to it, and it kind of blew me away and got me super interested into the band. It's the last from Ross the Boss too, with his great riffs. He may not be, he is definitely their best guitarist, but it depends what you're thinking of. When it comes to solos, yeah, maybe some of the other guitarists were a bit better or more elaborate and technical, but he is still a great solo artist. But on top of that, he's able to create these great riffs that are just awesome, and I love them. So I think he is my favorite guitarist of the band. But yeah, very solid record. Again, you're starting to see a big change in sound. Kings of Metal is like the best metal anthem ever. It's so good. Heart of Steel is, if you know me and see my reactions, I'm not into the slower, more ballady type tracks or with a lot more power metal than heavy metal incorporated. But Heart of Steel, man, just wins me over. It's definitely their best when you're talking about that type of song. The pianos is so good in it. I absolutely love it. Kingdom Come, badass. Pleasure Slave's a bonus that they randomly threw in the middle, but it doesn't hurt the album if you include it. I still enjoy it. Hail and Kill, one of the best. And Blood of the Kings is probably my personal favorite on the album. I love the lyrics, how it goes through everything we know about Manowar up to this date. And yeah, it's just another great song to play live, I imagine. But yeah, it's just Eric Adams has his screams at an all time high on this album. He's so good at that. And yeah, my only thing that bothers me a bit on this album is the crown and the ring. Everybody loves this track, and to me, it's overrated. It just doesn't work for me. It's just not my style, I guess. That's one of the slower tracks that just don't work for me. It's very organ driven, and there's no metal in there, that's for sure. But besides that, it's got a great production. This is the band peaking at an all time high, and it's freaking great. I'm putting it up in amazing. If the crown and the ring was more my style, I think this would have been easily put up into Kings of Metal. And plus, we got the Warrior's Prayer, which is like a perfect bedtime story. But after you heard it once or twice, it's not something I'm going to keep listening to. I'll usually skip and go right to the Blood of the Kings, if I'm being honest. But yeah, killer record. I can see why everybody loves it. Moving on to the 90s. We reached the Triumph of Steel. Now, this is an odd album for me because, on one hand, you got great solos from Shankle. You got Rhino on drums, just killing it. He's going all out, very intense. And I love how the songs build up to the choruses, like in Metal Warriors, what Spirit of a Horse of the Cherokee, or even in what other track? Burning. Those tracks feel like the verses are more subdued and they build to this epic chorus. And I kind of like that style of songwriting. Achilles, Agony, and Ecstasy in 8 parts is not going to be for everybody. I respect it more than I love it. I feel like it takes one or two too many liberties in its songwriting, like stopping to do a drum solo for 3 minutes and then all this different stuff. It feels a little jumbled and jagged, but it does go along with the story of Achilles and Hector battling and all that. So I really do respect it for its lyrics and the way it's set up, but it doesn't exactly work for me as a song to just sit down and listen to, right? It's more of an experience. And I feel like it would have been better to put that track at the end instead of the first of your album. But yeah, I pretty much love everything else. Ride the Dragon's my favorite track on here. It's so damn good. Power of Thy Sword is awesome too. Yeah, a lot of good tracks on here. Master of the Wind is probably the weakest for me. Again, just not my style. I know a lot of people love it, and good on you, but it's just not for me. But yeah, the album just doesn't flow very good when you're going through the tracks. It just doesn't feel as consistent as some of the other albums that came before. But at least there's not really any nonsense tracks like just a random, bass solo thrown in there. I feel like they did enough on Achilles on the opening track that they didn't have to put any more experimental stuff on here. But yeah, it's an okay album. I like it. I don't hate it, but I don't think it's as good as what came before. But it's still going under the good category. It's definitely not just okay. It's better than that. But yeah, that's where I stand on the Triumph of Steel. I feel like that's my first big hot take, maybe. I know a lot of you guys do love the album still, but to me, it is good. Up next, we reached album number 8 with Louder Than Hell, an album that I didn't think too much of the first time I listened to it in my reactions. I thought the songwriting could have been a bit stronger. But, going back and listening to all these songs multiple times, I really grown to appreciate this album. It's pretty damn good, actually. It's more of the same. It's a little less original, but what they're doing the same of is really good. I mean, it's still top notch. It's just, it lacks memorable riffs, I feel, in the verse especially. But it does have very catchy choruses. Every chorus on all these tracks really hit, and they're extremely catchy, man. Return of the Warlord, even better than the Warlord, the first track, in my opinion. The sequel even beats it. I love the Gods Made Heavy Metal. Kind of a simple track, but easy to get stuck in your head. Cool chorus. Number One is a track that really got great to me on re-listen. It just sticks with me while I'm at work. Number One's always coming in my head. So I really grown to appreciate this album. Outlaw. I mean, it's pretty thrashy. It reminds me of Overkill, which I've just learned to find out that Overkill are actually huge fans of Manowar, which is cool. And they actually do a couple covers. But yeah, Today is a Good Day to Die. It's kind of experimental, but I really love the drum pattern, and it's so atmospheric that I don't mind. And My Spirit Lives On. We normally see tracks like this with Joey DeMaio playing his bass all crazy. This time we get a guitar solo by Carl Logan. And you know what? He kills it on that solo. And it's just nice to hear something different than just the bass solo. So, gotta give him to that. And the way the album ends with The Power, it's just so intense and fun to listen to. So, yeah, an album I really grown to love over time, over the last month or so. So, where am I going to put it? I figured it would be under just okay, but no, I'm putting it under great. I think it reached that status at this point for me. Freaking good album. On to album number 9. We made it into the millennium, into the 2000s with Warrior of the World. Now, or Warriors of the World, I should say. Call to Arms, the opening track, is a 10 out of 10, and to me, it might be their best track they've ever made. And that's why this album was so hard to put my finger on, because the metal tracks on here are perfection. Track number 1, and then track number 8 to 11. Like Warriors of the World United, Hand of Doom, friggin' masterpiece. Really insane solos in that track too. House of Death, Fight Until We Die. All freaking masterpiece tracks, which gives this album potential to be the Kings of Metal, a 10 out of 10. But we got songs like Fight for Freedom and, The March, Swords in the Wind, which I don't mind, but they're definitely a step down for me. You got Nisam Dorma, which should have been a bonus track. If you watch my reaction, I was kind of blown away by Eric Adams being able to do opera. It's really impressive and super talented, but does it fit on this album? Not really. I feel like that should have been a bonus track, and an American Trilogy should have been taken off the album. That to me is not a song I ever want to listen to. It's always being skipped. So yeah, there's a few tracks in here that don't exactly work for me, but then there's other tracks that are the best the band has ever written. So it's tough with this album. It's really tough. One half is straight up metal, the other half is like classical, opera, symphonies, and slow ballads. So, but again, the metal on here is freaking stellar. And it's my understanding that this album was tweaked because of 9/11. They changed some things, and perhaps that's why there's a few tracks like there is. So it is what it is, though. In the end, at the end of the day, the album is still great. It's just sad because it has potential to be amazing or the best. Like, so much potential, but it just didn't quite reach there. But still a great album, and definitely a return to form for the metal side of the band. Okay, up next, we probably got a hot take, so let me take a drink. At number 10, we got the 2007 album Gods of War. Now, I really respect this album for what the band was going for, this concept album about Odin and, Vikings and stuff like that, the whole story. I got to give them credit for that. The story and the lyrics are great. They didn't make a mistake there. But we do get 16 tracks here, and half of them are not metal. There's a lot of symphonies, orchestra related stuff on here. There's a lot of narration tracks, which, if you're just listening to this album from start to finish, I think it's like 77 minutes long or something. Um, there are some parts that are hard to get through, especially the first track. I mean, it's like 6 minutes and some of just like orchestra playing. I get it. It makes it feel epic, cinematic. It goes with their story. But as a metalhead, it's just not for me, okay? Which is unfortunate because you got songs like King of Kings, which has great guitar in there and an amazing chorus. I freaking love the chorus in that one. The Sons of Odin, so damn good. That's probably my favorite track on this record now. Everything about that song is amazing. And Blood of Odin is okay to have narration in that because it kind of builds up to this track. So sometimes the narration and the symphonic tracks work, but most times they don't for me. Kind of loses momentum when you add in those. Gods of War is my second favorite track on here. And here they incorporate the symphonic elements with the metal. And I think that's what works best with the band, especially on an album like this. I would have loved them to do that on all the songs, not separate their metal and their symphonic stuff, Put them together and it would have been awesome because Gods of War is just so epic with the trumpets and the metal. It reminds me of Sacred World, is it? By Blind Guardian, how epic that intro to that song is. But yeah, it's definitely an album that I respect more than I actually love. We got the bonus track Die for Metal, which sounds more straight up Manowar, with their older stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, you got 8 real songs with the bonus track, and the rest is usually skipping for me, skippable tracks. So still not bad though. When it comes down to it, I'm putting this under good. It's still good. The metal tracks on here are all great. It's just I have to be in a certain mood to listen to this album from start to finish. So going into this, I thought I was going to put it in below average or maybe even just okay, one or the other. But after listening to it over and over, I came to respect it more. And it's going under good, but it's a low good, just to let you guys know. But yeah, it is what it is. We only got one album left. Album number 11, Lord of Steel, or The Lord of Steel, I should say. And, this is always on the bottom of everybody's ranking from what I see on the metal websites and that. It's not a bad album, man. It really is a bit underrated when it comes to the score. Unfortunately, we get a bad production on here, and I don't mean a raw production like Hail to England. What I mean is the guitars kind of get drowned out. They don't really have an edge to them, and the bass is just way too overpowering. It hurts songs like The Lord of Steel, and the first few tracks kind of get hurt by it. I feel like the second half of the album, you don't notice the overpowered bass as much. Might be just the way the songs are structured in the second half. But yeah, I even listened to the Hammer edition of this one, and it still has its production problems. That one sounds a bit more raw, but this one's way too bassy. Funny enough, my Bluetooth speaker in my truck that I use to listen to music, I have an equalizer on there, and there's a button that cuts the bass in half, and it makes this album sound freaking fantastic. It's like what it was meant to sound like, so at least I have that. But the only real problem I have with this album, aside from there being a production issue, mixing issue, is there's no like hits on here. There's no real big standout tracks. but there's also no bad tracks either. So it's tough. I mean, everything's like an 8 or an 8.5 out of 10, right? It doesn't go any lower or higher than that. Not a bad thing, but nothing to get like to have me going back over and over and over to listening again, right? But it's always fun when I do listen. I think the only kind of standout track is Annihilation. I love that one. It's my favorite. The screams when he says Annihilation, so damn good. And the grooves in that track are friggin' infectious. But yeah, a good album. Like I said, not really a bad track. Expendable, or I know a lot of people love Touch the Sky, but them two are probably the weaker ones, and they're still damn good. So it's really just a production issue and a lack of a real big hit on this album. But yeah, definitely not their worst in my opinion. So where am I putting The Lord of Steel? To me, it's going under. It's like a high good or a low great. It's tough. It's tough. I'm gonna stick it in great for now. No, I'm gonna actually stick it in good. I changed. I'm making up my mind. It would be great if they would fix the production, but aside from that, I'm gonna have to drop it down to good. But good is still good, right? So I think I'm pretty comfortable with this tier list. Nothing made it below good, so you know I am a fan of Manowar. They'll be a band I listen to the rest of my life, and I'm excited to hear more from them, their EPs, and hopefully we'll have another studio album from them one of these days. So let me know in the comments, do you agree with this? How far off am I from you? I'm sure the big, heavy Manowar fans are probably going to have most of the things up, and Kings of Metal are amazing, but you know, I'm just a little bit more than a casual fan at this point, but I'm definitely a fan. So yeah, that's all I got for this tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. I am going to do the actual ranking right now, so stay tuned for that. And I'll be doing more of these tier lists every time I go through a discography from a band and react into them. So here is my ranking from worst to best. So in last place at number 11, I give it to Gods of War. At number 10, The Triumph of Steel. At number 9, The Lord of Steel. At number 8, Warriors of the World. At number 7, Louder Than Hell. At number 6, Into Glory Ride. At number 5, Fighting the World. At number 4, Kings of Metal. At number 3, Hail to England. At number 2, Sign of the Hammer. And at number 1, the best of the best, the King of Metal, I'm giving it to Battle Hymns, their debut record. So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, drop your rankings down in the comment section. Your favorite albums, your least favorite albums. How far off am I from you? Do you think this is a bad tier list, a good tier list? I'd love to hear it in the comments section. Just keep it civilized. And I'm not going to apologize for the way I rank things, because this is actually how I feel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy rankings and videos like this. I will return with more EPs from Manowar, finish off all the songs I haven't heard before. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.